Good morning, afternoon, evening or night to you viewers, and welcome to the first episode of Decoding the Codex. If you don't know what this project is, check out the video linked above. Today I'm going to tackle perhaps the biggest mystery in all of Mass Effect, the answer that kickstarted this entire project, what the Mass Effect actually is. My journey to figuring this out started with a simple frustration: the Codex. The Codex makes a habit of mentioning or referencing laws of physics I happen to be familiar with to explain the various phenomena seen in the universe. For example, how the light emissions from a ship within a Mass Effect field seem to change color, or really wavelength, due to the speed of light being different inside the field. If such a thing were to exist in our real world, that is exactly what would happen. But when it comes to the Codex entry on FTL, the information supplied is shockingly vague. It only makes a passing comment on how ESO reduces mass when exposed to a current, and then states, with no further explanation at all, that this somehow increases the speed of light? Surely there had to be some kind of explanation here. After a night theorizing about how maybe Mass Effect ships actually had negative mass and how I might go about calculating their actual top speeds, yes, I was doing that, I decided to take a step back. I took a breath, I had a snack, and I asked myself, if I were to calculate something about the Mass Effect, what formula might I use? Now, this formula would have to incorporate both the speed of light, c, and mass, m, as those are the two units we know for certain are involved in the Mass Effect. There was only a single formula that immediately came to mind, the well-known E=mc². This formula describes the relation between mass and energy. A little background for those who don't know. Mass is, very simply put, a form of energy, a sort of condensed energy, if you will, and every certain amount of mass is equal to a fixed amount of energy. Additionally, mass can be turned into energy, and theoretically, energy can be turned back into mass. This is actually what the transporters from Star Trek do to transport mass across a large distance. The formula E=mc² describes how much energy a given amount of mass is equal to, the so-called matter-energy equivalence. This form of the equation is a little inconvenient though, as it has both mass and the speed of light, my two variables, on the same side. To use it, it would be nice if I could use one of the variables to solve for the other one. I was thinking about solving for top speed at the time, so I chose to try solving for the speed of light. So I rewrote the formula to this: c equals the square root of E/m. And as soon as I wrote this down, it clicked. I'm going to simplify this formula for a moment by making all the variables equal to 1, because it'll make it a lot easier to read. Look at how this formula is laid out. If we assume that conservation of energy, a law Mass Effect does at least attempt to follow, applies, E will always have to be 1, no matter what happens. In our universe, M is also always 1, so C is always 1. Or in other words, in our universe, the speed of light is always the same. But if something were to happen to M, say if there was some effect that reduces mass, to, for example, 0.25, then the division of 1 over 0.25 would equal 4, and the square root of 4 equals 2. That means that if there were a phenomenon that changes the matter-energy equivalence to make energy be equal to less mass, the speed of light would increase. This is what is happening inside Mass Effect's FTL drives. When a ship exposes Element Zero to a static electrical charge, it emits what the Codex calls a dark energy field, which is actually a region of space-time around the Element Zero where the matter-energy equivalence of the universe is modified. Because the ship's energy has to be constant, modifying the equivalence makes the ship have less mass for its energy, which results in an increase of the speed of light. And because the ship is now much lighter, it is easier for it to reach ridiculously high speeds, thus making FTL travel possible. This altering of space-time is governed by the relative size of the electrical charge element 0 is exposed to. The greater the charge, the greater the mass reduction, and the greater the increase in the speed of light. Thus, a drive core capable of holding a greater static charge allows for a faster ship. Side note, I said charge multiple times while the codec says current. I've changed it to charge because the codec says that the behavior of a Mass Effect field is determined by whether or not the electrical current is positive or negative. But the thing is, a plain electrical current through a piece of material cannot be positive or negative. A charge, however, can, and besides it will make some of the quirks of the FTL system a lot more logical, but that's a story for another time. That does still leave another question though: what actually is Element Zero? Well, I think I've got that one nailed too. Element Zero is what we call dark matter. A little background. The speed at which a body orbits another one, a moon around a planet, or a planet around a star, or a star around the galaxy, is based on the mass of the system as a whole. This is usually simplified to the mass of the larger object because stars are much heavier than planets and planets are much heavier than satellites. All else being equal, the more mass a star has, the faster a planet will orbit around it. The same goes for our galaxy. The more stuff is in the galaxy in total, the faster stuff will spin around the galactic center. But there's a problem. Scientists have been able to measure the mass of both all the stars in our galaxy and the orbital speeds of those stars, and they don't match. The stars are orbiting much, much faster than they should be. There is an enormous amount of mass somewhere in our galaxy that scientists can't see, and because they can't see any proof of this mass anywhere, they have dubbed the phenomenon dark matter. Here's a fun fact about Element Zero. It's called that because it canonically has an atomic number of 0. Atoms are made of a nucleus containing protons and neutrons, and a cloud of electrons around it. The atomic number denotes how many protons are in the nucleus of an atom. Hydrogen has an atomic number of 1, meaning it has 1 proton in the nucleus. Iron has an atomic number 26, so it has 26 protons per atom. Because element 0 has an atomic number of 0, it has no protons. If it has no protons, that means it must not have an electron cloud. And for complicated physics reasons that I'm not going to bore you with, that means most wavelengths of light cannot interact with it, thus making it almost impossible to see. Exactly how you would describe dark matter. And I can prove it too. Just look at the ending of Mass Effect 3. You can clearly see the mass relay's ESO cores active, that's what the big glowing blue thing is, right up until the relay is destroyed. Then you don't see an inactive blob of element 0. The light just disappears, seemingly leaving behind nothing. But that's not true. There is a blob of element 0 there. After all, it just was there, it's just invisible to us because there's no electron clouds for visible light to interact with. This also explains why Mass Effect spacefaring species are not aware of element 0 until they find a Prothean information archive or a similar ruin. As a rule of thumb, light only really interacts with stuff equal to or bigger than its own wavelength. Radio waves, for instance, have a very long wavelength, meaning they pass through, or more accurately over, the atoms in a wall, which is why a Wi-Fi signal can pass through an entire building. Visible light, in the range of 700 to 400 nanometers, does interact with the molecular structures of a wall, hence why you can't see through them. An atomic nucleus, however, is measured in femtometers. A femtometer is 1 million times smaller than a nanometer. Gamma radiation, which we can detect, is generally measured in picometers, but even those are still 1,000 times bigger than a femtometer. To build a scanner capable of detecting element 0 would require an emitter capable of generating an unbelievable amount of energy, and a receiver that's equally sensitive. Additionally, exposure to such high energy radiation would almost certainly be extremely hazardous to any organic being. No self-respecting civilization would ever have a reason to build such a device, unless they found evidence in a Prothean ruin that it could reveal a key ingredient to faster than light travel. I think that about summarizes it for today. I don't yet have any kind of schedule for these videos, so I can't say when the next one releases, but I do know I'll be discussing the various quirks and unique limitations of Mass Effect's FTL system. I hope to see you then. Kila Salai.